The Technomancer is the latest action RPG from developer team Spiders, previously known for games such as Mars, Warlogs, and most recently Bound by Flame. I have played Bound by Flame, and it's quite clear that the Technomancer has carried over some mechanics. The crafting and upgrade systems both return, alongside companions and the ability to switch combat stances. The Technomancer is set during something known as the War of Water, which takes place 200 years after humans colonized Mars. You play as an upcoming rookie Technomancer by the name of Zachariah. Zachariah comes from a privileged background where powerful corporations operate on the Red Planet. The game is an underlying tone of disparity between classes. Humans began colonizing Mars, and at some point after this, an event took place known as the Turmoil that caused Mars to be cut off from the planet Earth and was exposed directly to the Sun. Those that came into direct contact with sunlight suffered fatal effects. Now Mars is being run by important water companies who battle to gain control. The game always seems to have a mysterious feel and kept me intrigued throughout. Technomancers are mage warriors with incredible talents that involve the ability to control electricity. Scientists have been able to develop and implanted chips that amplifies their powers of electricity, making them extremely powerful. Zachariah is learning to become a powerful Technomancer and joins the governing power known as Abundance, but over the course of the game you start to make choices that determine who you side with. The story is surprisingly good and at times reminded me of Mass Effect series or even Dragon Age. The game does a good job of guiding you through the story that reveals truths about the world around you as you start to see the good and bad of your own allegiance. Some people side with the Technomancers, while others despise them entirely. You travel through many environments and explore different areas of Mars and begin to uncover some interesting truths. The game also feels like it draws inspiration from Star Wars franchise, and also, even though it's not an MMO, it does have similarities to Knights of the Old Republic. When you start the game, you watch a short cinematic and then head over to the character creation screen. The customization is fairly limited, with a few faces to choose from, a few hairstyles, skin tone, and other aspects. You can only play as a male character, which seems like a shame and is probably due to the male voice acting for your character. The game certainly has similarities to large open world games like The Witcher or Mass Effect, where you can get to explore many different locations and carry out multiple quest lines. The Technomancer may feel like an open world game, but it's actually fairly linear, which doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Early on in the game you also gain 2 allies who join you on your quests. These characters are fairly bland, but they do tend to help you out when you're faced with enemies. When I started the game I was unsure what the combat was going to be like, and there was actually more depth to it than I was expecting. Like most RPGs, combat and other character abilities fit into different classes or styles. The awesome thing about the Technomancer is you don't have to stick with just one class, you can actually switch between them at any point and upgrade them separately. Progression through leveling up allows you to distribute points towards the skills and talents to become a formidable hero in one area, or you can choose to spread your experience more widely and become balanced in all areas. Each class have their positives and negatives, so I suggest experimenting with each to see what suits your playstyle best. Your base class is being a Technomancer, and from there you have 3 subclasses, the Warrior, Guardian and Rogue classes, that are all on offer, play in very different and interesting ways. Warriors are hard hitters and use a mace and shield, Guardians use a 2-handed staff, and the roguelike class uses daggers and traps. You can use electrical abilities with any of these classes, making them more powerful. I really like turning my staff into an electrical weapon as it looks just like a lightsaber from Star Wars. In general, the combat feels satisfying and stringing together combos is great fun. The combat here is actually fairly difficult, and it takes some time learning how to correctly time attacks and dodge enemies. Enemies can quickly counterattack, so it's important to know when to dodge. Your health will deplete quickly, but you can use health injections that you acquire during the game. The attacks you perform are fairly limited, but you can apply various electrical boosts and abilities to attacks, which is fun. As you explore, you will face humans or creatures roaming Mars that you must fight. Bandits use similar melee weapons to you, but also have some long-range weapons like guns. Occasionally you'll run into opposing Technomancers serving for rival factions who, like you, will have the ability to electrically charge their weapons. The monsters are different and come in different forms. Some creatures will spit poison and some are extremely strong. This is where learning your classes is crucial to overcoming each scenario. Environments you explore are varied and interesting but have a fairly basic layout. You'll begin in the main city where your faction Abundance is housed and the city is connected to rundown slum areas. From here you will travel out on missions and quests, exploring ruins and the area surrounding it. The game does have some very unique and interesting areas to discover later on in the game. There are also hidden chests full of useful items, but I was disappointed there wasn't more scattered around the world. During the game you also get to meet various NPCs. Some are more interesting to talk to than others, and often give more backstory and depth to the world and events that took place. Like I said before, you can also gain companions that help a lot. I was a little disappointed at just how limited the dialogue system was compared to say Mass Effect, and the voice acting isn't great at times, although Zachariah sounds fine. The presentation is good enough and even looks great at times, but it's certainly not up to the standard we would expect from a PS4 title in 2016. The environments are very unique and I enjoyed exploring them, even if it did feel too linear at times. The game does have a particular style and flair that I enjoyed a lot, but it did feel extremely dark and it was hard to see at times, so I suggest turning up the brightness. The game also ran fairly well, and the frame rate only dipped a few times when faced with multiple enemies on screen. The sound design is mixed, with good sound effects and music, but the voice acting is poor on a whole. Overall, the Technomancer is an enjoyable experience that has an interesting narrative, unique setting, and combat that feels satisfying. Despite having a few issues, like the poor voice acting, the Technomancer is actually a game that I enjoyed playing a lot more than I expected. The combat system is fluid and the ability to switch classes at any time is great. The game may not feel as polished as other well-known open-world RPGs, but it does have its own unique style and is very enjoyable to play. Thanks for watching guys, and for all things gaming, stick with KeenGamer.
Ah!